Alright, this is the video Leadership in Papua number 2. We are doing this for Ob Anggen school students, but we'll put it on YouTube for anyone else who wants to watch. Now going to be talking about understanding Papuan beliefs about leadership and Papuan style, Melanesian style, and also tribal style. So today we're going to talk a little bit about tribal style leadership and what does that look like, what is the tradition of it. Now memang there's a lot of different ways all over the world, but there are some common things. Ada persamaan, ada hal-hal yang sama in tribal leadership throughout the world. And we're going to talk about a number of different leaders and tribal leaders in history, and then we will compare those to the situation now, because ada perubahan juga. So we're going to look at some that are from 800 years ago to 200 years ago to 50 years ago. We all know probably one of the most famous stories of really what would be called a tribal leader in this way. And every tribe is different, and there's some tribes that were very peaceful and other tribes that were very warlike, but we're using this general idea of and I'm using the word tribalism. Some people won't like that, but just think about it and we'll see what we can learn together. Robin Hood is a famous story about a man in England, and we're not even sure if this is a true story or a made-up story or how much, is it based on something true, but the idea is that he and his group, they form a tribe or a group, and they start to steal from the rich people. And the rich people are bad, they are corrupt, they are using their power to enrich themselves and keep everybody else poor. But they steal from the rich and then they bring back and they share with what they have with the poor people. And they all are kind of living in a community where they bagi-bagi rata, they distribute their wealth. And so Robin Hood is a great hero. People love him. Not the rich people. The rich people don't love him. They hate him, and they have the sheriff and the police all trying to catch him and kill him. So the story, if you've watched the movie, is all about Robin Hood and then the sheriff and the rich people and this whole struggle between. But that's really a story of tribalism. There's some principles in the story. There's violence. They use bows and arrows and weapons. They take from the travelers or the people from outside. They take from them and then they bring it back and share with all the poor people. Now there's many examples of this. We can go all around the world. So that's Europe. That's England. We can go to America, and probably one of the most famous that people know about is Geronomo, but there are many. In America there were more than 500 tribes before. And one of the really famous tribes was the Apache. The Apache were very warlike. They were known for raiding. Raiding is when you serang musuh atau pihak lain dan membunuh, merampas, mencuri, atau bukan mencuri, but mengambil mereka punya kekayaan. Maybe it would be horses, maybe it would be women, maybe it would be guns, gold, money, whatever would be the wealth that they have, even shovels or machines or something like that. And then bring it back to your people to share. And one of the great Geronomo, he was very brave, and he was a great warrior, and he was very smart. He lived along the border between America and Mexico in the state of Arizona and New Mexico, and he would go across the border to Mexico and steal their cows and horses and kill the ranchers and steal the women and the children, and they would use the children as slaves. They would make the women their wives, and they would take the horses and cows, and then much of it they would sell, but they would take it back across the border into America and they would sell it there. Then when the Americans got pusing with him, he moved to Mexico, and then he would go across the border into America and do the same thing and take it back to Mexico. So he main perbatasan di situ for a long time. And there were more than 4,000 soldiers that were trying to catch him and his group of 30 of his little community. Now they all shared their wealth together, the horses, the cows, the money, everything was dibagi rata dalam mereka punya komunitas, kira-kira begitu. So Geronomo is another one. Maybe you've heard the story of the Vikings. They were the Norse up by Sweden, Norway, Northern Europe, and they would come down into Southern Europe and, in their ships, and they would steal. Very similar to the Bugis before, famous pirates, bajak laut. Same story. You go and steal, you take, you rob, you bring back, and you bagi-bagi. Now I'm using the word steal and rob, but really it's raiding is the term. But I think that's not normal English word for you. So raiding, that's when you serang. Biasanya it's diam-diam, mungkin malam atau pagi-pagi, serang musuh dengan tujuan untuk membunuh, membawa pulang mereka punya kekayaan. So another, but the most famous one of all time was a man named Genghis Khan. He was from Mongolia, from a very small tribe, and he was a very small man, not an important man. But slowly he gained power, and he ended up becoming the most terkenal kepala suku di seluruh dunia. Antara semua suku, tidak ada suku yang bisa bandingkan dengan dia. Most tribes are very small, like Geronomo led 30, 40, 50, maybe at the most 100 people. In Papua, you have the greatest chief ever was Ukam Herek. And he probably had 1,000, 2,000 orang di bawah dia punya otoritas. So most tribal groups tend to be very, very small. But most tribal groups are very small, and with Genghis Khan, that's how it was also. Very, very small groups. I think sometimes 5, 10, 15, just a small family. But then they had some bigger groups, maybe up to 100 or maybe 1,000. But Genghis Khan, at the end of his life, he controlled from Japan all the way sampai Eropa, dari Rusia sampai Cambodia, Vietnam, sampai kapal-kapal Mongolian sudah masuk ke Jawa. He controlled through India into Africa, Mesir. So he had the penjajahan paling besar di dunia. And that was tahun 1200-an begitu. So about 800 years ago. Okay, so we're going to be talking a little bit more about Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan, or Genghis Khan, I don't know how to say his name really because I'm not from Mongolia, but almost all tribal societies are built on kinship or close family relationship. So here in Papua you have the Pengu, the Pagawak, the Bamingen, and then they have their links to the other Fam. And then di atas itu you have the Suku. But most tribal cultures, the highest loyalty, the strongest link is blood, is family. And so that is what controls everything. And that's what we call sukuisme or tribalism. But really it's not, most of the time it's not nearly as big as the tribe. The clan or the family group is far more important. We have the same in America still. We still have, if you go to Ireland and England, they still have clans. 200, 300 years ago, it was so strong and so powerful there. But lama-lama, it becomes less and less powerful. So in Papua now, we see there's many changes from 70 years ago until now. It's really changing. Now, many people from Bokendini have married people from Java, from Serui, from Jayapura. And so then this idea of Dara Murni, or the pure blood and the pure tribe, is breaking down. Many people have gone out and they live in the asrama together with people from Hitigima, from Silimo, from Yahokimo, and the tribalism breaks down. But still, it's very easy here in Papua to bikin api kembali. The wood is masih kering and masih panas and siap menyala lagi. So as you go into, you look at tribalism, that's the core. Raiding, the belief that you go out to get wealth. You pergi dan ambil kekayaan dan bawa kembali. It's sort of like going into the hutan, into the jungle, and looking for the cassowary bird or the wild pig. You kill it and you bring it home. Or it's that you go out in, you get the buah pandang, the pandanus fruit nut, and you bring it back home, and then you share it. So it's kind of hunter-gatherer, we call it, idea about wealth, where you go out, you get it, you bring it back, and you share it among the clan. And in many tribal societies, the hunter who goes and kills the animal and brings it back, maybe he himself will eat none of the meat, but he will only share it. But when he shares it, everybody says, wow, jagoan, orang ini boleh. And then that person starts to be lifted up into a position of leadership. The Kapala Suku Perang is the same. The war chief is the same. He leads the battles, the wars, he wins. They get pigs, they bring women, children, all of this they bring back to the clan. He shares it. He becomes a great leader because he has what we call distributed the wealth. Distribute means to bagi-bagi. And if he bagi-bagi rata dengan baik, the old Kapala Sukus, the old chiefs here in Papua, many times they would be very poor because they shared everything they had. And other people had more than them. But they jaga nama baik, or they had a good name because they distributed the wealth. And that was one of the highest values in many tribal raiding cultures, was sharing equally the wealth. Now, this point, this belief is that the way we get wealth, or kekayaan, is we go out and get it and bring it back. Now, this is very different than the modern market economy that is controlling the world today. This belief about market economy is that we create wealth. We menciptakan kekayaan. So in America today, if you go there and talk to them, most people believe that you have the power to create wealth. If you're smart, if you get a good education, if you work hard, if you do good marketing, if you are honest, you can become very, very wealthy. So we look at Bill Gates, we look at all of these, the richest people in America, Rockefeller, all of them. They were smart, they worked hard, they had a good name. Having a good name means you're jujur, you do what you say you will do, people can trust you, and then you can become very rich because you menciptakan, you create wealth. So this is very different than the raiding style of belief where you have to go take wealth from someone else. This is that we have the power to create wealth. Okay, so back to Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan and the Mongolians had the belief that they did not make anything. They had no factories. They didn't know how to make knives or swords or steel. They only knew how to take from others. So the Chinese at the time were their close neighbors, and the Chinese knew how to make gunpowder, how to make metal, how to make many things, how to make kain. And so that area is very famous for silk. So the Chinese knew how to make this. The Mongolians didn't know how to make anything. They knew how to hunt. They knew how to raise animals. So they had horses, they had cows, they had sheep and goats, but they didn't know how to create wealth in like a factory or make something other than herding animals and hunting. So they would steal, or they would raid. They would take from their neighbors. Now the difference with Genghis Khan and most other Kapala Sukus around the world was that Genghis Khan didn't follow nepotism like other tribal leaders. Other tribal leaders say, only if you are Suku saya, my family, you're my adik, you're my ipar, you're my om, then I will give you position of power, and I will trust you. But Genghis Khan looked at people's kemampuan, their ability. Were they good at this? And it didn't matter if they were part of his family or another family or whatever, but he trusted people based on their ability and their skill. And so this is a part now that we see in modern society, market economy and so forth. You look for the person who has the skill, yang sudah buktikan bahwa dia bisa buat. then you make him in charge of building, because you see, wow, he's very good at building. It doesn't matter what his family name is. You put the person. So Genghis Khan, because he didn't practice nepotism, but he looked at people's ability first, then he became inclusive, and he had many other people come in and join his team or his tribe or his clan. And because of that, they were able to expand, and they had the largest empire that has ever been. Bigger than the Roman Empire, bigger than the Japanese Empire, bigger than any empire that has ever been. Bigger than the English Empire. And so, sadly, as he got older, he started to go back to the tribal system. And then he wanted his 4 sons to be the rulers. But his sons were not good leaders, and they were not good men. And so, slowly his empire, well, not slowly, but quickly, his empire fell apart. And his sons, all of his 4 sons were dead within 14 years of when he died. So they died very young, because most of them were pamabuk, and they were really, all they did was drinking and fighting amongst themselves. And they started to fight each other, even though they were the same family. And then his grandchildren, his sons who were leading, were even worse. And so within 100 years from when he started, all of his empire was gone. Everything was lost. And now if you go to Mongolia, it is nothing. It's a tiny little poor country with very few people and no power. But because he in the beginning of his time, he didn't do nepotism, then he expanded and became great. The second thing he did that was very different is that every village or city that he would come to with his warriors, he would give them the opportunity. He would send a person first. He didn't just attack them tiba-tiba, tenga malam, or early morning, but he would send someone and he would say, you have 2 choices. Number 1, you can join us, and every year you can give us 10% pajak to me, and I will protect you. If you don't join us, I will kill you all. I will take your women, I will take your children, and I will kill every man, and I will take everything you have. And so many decided to fight him, and they died, because he was an amazing warrior. But many joined him. And then because they joined him, he became more powerful, and more powerful, and more powerful. Most tribal cultures don't do that. They are so sukuisme, it's only their suku. They don't want anyone else to join them. So these are 2 things that were different about Genghis Khan and his and what made him into the greatest Kapala suku of all time. In fact, at the end, when his 4 sons, their wives were not Mongolian. Their wives were from Europe, from Asia, from Tajikistan, and most of their wives were Christian. And so when the men were off fighting for 2, 3, 4 years at a time, the women were the ones that were the ratu that was running the empire. So it was very interesting that at the end, that during this whole time, it was women who were not Mongolian, and they were not also the religion, the animistic religion of the Mongolians. Most of them were Christian or Muslim, and they were the ones yang menjalankan dan mengatur kerajaan Genghis Khan. And so you have some very interesting pieces that make Genghis Khan different than most tribal leaders that you have today. Okay.